I'm not a nervous driver. I grew up on these roads outside Yakima, and I know every bend by heart. Same two-lane highway, same fields, same long stretches of nothing. My parents used to joke that by the time I got my license, the car could probably drive that route on its own. That night, I was coming home from my friend's wedding. My dress was bunched up under the seatbelt, my sneakers didn't match anything I was wearing, and my hair was held together with the last 4 bobby pins that survived the dancing. But the drive was calm, quiet, just me, the low music, and cruise control. It was around 11:30 p.m., late, but not anything weird happens late. The sky was clear, moon bright, traffic basically non-existent. I passed a farmhouse every now and then, a barn light in the distance, nothing unusual. I was replaying the wedding in my head. The first dance, the bad jokes in the speeches, the 2 friends I dropped off earlier who cried over absolutely nothing. It was that soft after-party exhaustion that somehow feels good. About 20 minutes from town, something appeared in my headlights. Just a dark lump at first. Could have been a trash bag, a tire, or one of the deer that love jumping into traffic. But as the car rolled closer, the shape stretched upward. Got narrower. Then it turned into legs. Then a torso. Then a man. A man standing in the middle of my lane. Not waving. Not stumbling. Not trying to flag me down. Just standing. Arms straight at his sides, body facing me like he'd been placed there. There was no shoulder wide enough to pull over safely. No car nearby. No movement except his head, which turned slightly as my headlights hit him. I tapped the brakes, but the idea of coming to a full stop with him right in front of me made my whole core clench. Farmland or not, it was still a dark highway with nobody around. I slowed more. He didn't move. Didn't shield his eyes, didn't raise a hand. He just watched my car approach like he'd been waiting for it. Everything in me said, "Don't stop here." I eased into the oncoming lane, no cars in sight, and planned to pull over farther up where the road widened. I wasn't trying to ditch him completely. I just needed space and lights and some feeling of control. The moment I drew level with him, he moved. A sprint. I didn't see his full movement, just a blur of him launching toward the passenger side of my car. He cut across the beam of my headlights in this sharp diagonal, like he already knew exactly how many steps it would take to reach the door. There was a bump right near the handle. I don't remember deciding to accelerate. The engine just leapt, and suddenly the whole car was surging forward. My hands were locked around the wheel. I jerked back into my lane, tires buzzing over the lines, heart thundering loud enough I could feel it in my gums. When I looked in the rearview mirror, he was standing in the middle of the lane again, dead still. I didn't slow down again until I reached the first gas station on the outskirts of a small town. Bright lights, people, camera systems, civilization. I pulled in, threw the car into park, and sat there with my breath all uneven and my fingers tingling. My eyes kept jumping to the windows, expecting to see him jogging up the ramp toward me. When I finally got out, I went straight to the passenger side. There was a faint smear, maybe grease, just under the handle. A small scuff where something slid. Inside, I called the non-emergency number. I didn't want sirens. I didn't want to sound dramatic. I just wanted someone to know. The dispatcher said they'd had earlier reports of a pedestrian in the roadway. Their tone told me they weren't taking it seriously. Probably assumed he was drunk or high. But drunk people don't stand that still. They don't sprint at your door with that kind of precision. They don't stop again like mannequins afterward. I didn't argue with the dispatcher. I just thanked them and hung up. Driving home afterward, every shadow looked like a person waiting. I kept my doors locked and one hand on my phone, even though I knew deep down that if he wanted my car earlier, he'd almost gotten it. The next day, I checked the paint again in the sunlight. The smear was still there. For the rest of the week, my brain latched onto possibilities. None of them comforting. What if he was injured and I just drove past? What if someone else was hiding in the ditch waiting for me to stop? What if he was bait? What if I was one more mile from something I wasn't meant to survive? Some people ask why I didn't stop, why I didn't check on him, why I didn't try harder. And I don't have an answer that makes me feel heroic. Just the truth. Something was wrong with him. Wrong in a way I still don't have a good name for. Wrong in a way my instincts recognized before my brain did. And out on a dark highway in the middle of nowhere, instincts are sometimes the only thing standing between you and disappearing into the night. I still feel guilty when I think about him, but I also picture his sudden sprint, the thump on my door, the way he reset himself like a glitching video game character. If you're standing dead center in a highway lane at night, not moving, not speaking, not reacting, I'm not your first emergency call. And now, I don't slow down for shapes anymore. Not until I know exactly what and who I'm looking at. I'm a high school English teacher, which means I spend most of the year drowning in essays, coffee, and teenage drama. So when summer break finally hit, I packed up my little hatchback and decided to drive between national parks. Just me, cheap motels, and long stretches of highway where nobody needed me for anything. By the time I reached Amarillo, I'd been driving 8 hours straight. My legs were stiff, my eyes dry, and my car looked like I'd been living out of it. Which, to be fair, I kind of was. The motel I picked was exactly the kind you picture when you think roadside stop. Big glowing sign, 2 floors, exterior doors, cars parked inches from each room. Not fancy, not creepy, just a place to sleep and leave. The front desk clerk looked barely awake. Hoodie, messy hair, sitcom playing on a TV behind him. He didn't seem concerned about much in the world. "One night?" he asked. "Yep," I said. He typed with one hand, printed my Wi-Fi slip with the other, and slid me a key card in one of those little cardboard sleeves. Room 112. Ground floor. Around the corner. The walkway outside was lit by those tall yellow buzzing lights. A couple sat smoking outside their room. A TV flickered through curtains a few doors down, and the air still held that heavy late summer heat. My keycard blinked green on the first try. The room was exactly the level of depressing I expected. Patterned bedspread, squeaky AC, wooden table with 2 mismatched chairs. Cleanish, though. I've stayed in worse on school trips. I locked the door, main lock first, then the swing latch, and said the same thing I always say when I settle into a motel. Okay, now it's my space. I showered, changed into a giant t-shirt, set my alarm, and lay across the bed, scrolling until my eyes blurred. Then I put my phone down and drifted off. Sometime around midnight, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. A metallic rattle. The handle. I stayed still, listening. Maybe it was pipes. Maybe it was someone at the wrong door. Motels aren't quiet places. Then I heard the beep. That unmistakable electronic chirp of a keycard being swiped. And the lock clicked. Whoever was outside pressed down on the handle again. The swing latch caught, keeping the door from opening. I sat up fast. My first thought wasn't fear. It was annoyance. The clerk messed up the room assignment. Someone else thinks this is theirs. Teacher brain, always assuming it's an admin error. I cleared my throat and called out, "Someone's in here." The handle stopped. Silence. I waited, hoping to hear an embarrassed apology or footsteps leaving. Instead, a low male voice mumbled something through the door. I couldn't make out the words. There was no knock, no sorry, just another beep of a card, and another attempt on the handle. This time it pushed harder against the latch, like the person wasn't confused. They were persistent. Adrenaline hit me. I slid off the bed quietly, grabbed my phone, and backed up until I was against the far wall. "Wrong room," I said, louder, trying to keep my tone firm. The handle stopped again. He didn't walk away. I can't explain how I knew he was still there. I could feel his presence through the wood. I imagined him standing inches from me with only a deadbolt and a metal latch separating us. I pulled up the front desk number from the Wi-Fi slip with trembling fingers and hit call. 2 rings. "Front desk," the clerk said. I kept my voice low, Someone is trying to get into room 112 with a working key card. The latch is stopping it, but they've tried multiple times. The clerk paused like he needed a second to understand the words. No one else should have access to that room, he said. You're the only one checked into 112. Well, someone's out there using a key, I whispered. Stay inside. I'm coming down the walkway right now. As soon as he said that, the handle outside moved one last time. Then, footsteps, fading. I approached the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The walkway was empty. All doors closed. No shadows moving. No one turning a corner. Maybe 30 seconds later, someone knocked. Front desk. I checked the peephole again before touching the latch. It was definitely the clerk this time. He kept a few steps back from the door, hands in his hoodie pockets, looking around nervously. I walked straight here, he said. Didn't see anyone. No one passed me. He offered to move me upstairs, but the idea of walking along the balcony in pajamas while whoever was out there lurked somewhere didn't feel great either. I told him I'd stay put and thanked him. I slept maybe an hour total the rest of the night. In the morning, I packed up, checked out, and asked the clerk again if there had been any mix-up. No double assignment, he said. No other keys issued. I checked everything. I hesitated, then asked, "Can you look at the lock log? Every swipe is recorded automatically. Teachers love data, and that's why I knew this existed." He pulled up a screen filtered for room 112 and tilted the monitor slightly. "There," he said. 9:30 p.m. Your check-in." He scrolled. "And nothing else." "No attempts around midnight?" I asked. "No," he said. "The lock didn't register anything." I stared at the screen. The list was short, just one entry. Mine. "That's not possible," I said. "I heard it beep, twice." And the latch stopped the door from opening. He looked genuinely unsettled. It would be in the system if a card worked, unless... He didn't finish the sentence. Honestly, I'm not sure I wanted him to. I left, and for the rest of my trip, every motel door suddenly felt thinner. Every beep in a hallway, every rattle, every footstep outside. I listened harder. I still stay at roadside motels, but I don't take ground floor rooms anymore. I always ask for an inside hallway, higher floor, double locks. And sometimes when I'm half asleep somewhere unfamiliar, I'll hear it in my memory, that little electronic chirp. The sound of someone telling my door, I belong in there, even if the system swears they never existed. I run a small travel channel online. Nothing huge, just enough subscribers that I feel guilty if I go too long without posting, but not enough that anyone recognizes me at gas stations. My thing is calm road trip vibes. Long drives, coastal overlooks, time lapses of clouds, stuff people put on in the background while they clean. That's how I ended up on the Oregon coast last summer, with my SUV crammed full of camera gear and energy drinks. If you've never driven that route, it feels unreal. Pines bending toward the ocean, cliffs that drop straight down into whitewater, fog pulling across the road in sheets. I spent the whole day doing what I always do, stopping every few miles, dragging out gear, chasing light like it's a sport. There was one overlook I'd bookmarked for weeks. Small gravel lot, wooden guardrail, view straight out to the horizon. I pulled in near sunset. A couple cars were already there, a minivan with kids climbing around inside, and a silver sedan parked a few spaces down. The sedan caught my eye only because its driver was standing by the rail, hands in his pockets, staring out at the water. Normal stuff. I got to work immediately, mounted my GoPro on the back of my SUV, angled it so the car framed the shot and the coastline filled the background. Heard the little beep, saw the red light flash, and walked toward the rail to get wider angles. Wind was strong. My tripod kept wobbling, so I had to keep fixing it. Waves boomed against the rocks way below. At some point, when I turned back toward my SUV, the man from the silver sedan had moved. He wasn't at the rail anymore. He was standing closer to my car now, maybe one stall over, sort of facing my direction. He wasn't staring at me, wasn't smiling. just repositioned. I shrugged it off. People wander around these spots. I swapped lenses, moved the GoPro to a slightly different angle, ran another long take, did my usual wrap-up. After 20 minutes or so, I felt satisfied, shut off the GoPro, and headed back to my car. The man had drifted back toward the rail by then. I gave him a nod. He didn't react much. Maybe he didn't see. Harmless moment. I drove away thinking nothing of it. That night, after checking into a cheap motel inland, the kind with humming ice machines and carpet that feels slightly damp no matter what, I dumped all my footage onto my laptop. Editing on the road is ritual. It keeps me grounded. So I opened the GoPro folder and clicked on the first clip. It was exactly what I expected. My SUV in the foreground, ocean behind, wind noise, soft gray light. In the distance, near the rail, there was a small dark shape. A person, probably the man from the sedan. Nothing weird. I clicked into the second clip. Same frame, same angle, but now the person wasn't by the rail. He was closer. Directly behind my SUV, standing almost centered in the shot. His back was to the ocean. His body was angled toward the camera, frowned and scrubbed between the first two clips. Clip 1, figure by the rail. Clip 2, figure behind my car. Strange, but okay. Maybe he moved around a lot. I opened the third clip. Different angle slightly, more to the side, but the back of my SUV was still in frame. And again, there he was. Same jacket, same height, same stillness. Standing behind my car, facing the camera. It wasn't the guy wandering around, it was the repetition that got me. He appeared in every clip I'd taken at that overlook. Every single one. Sometimes tiny in the distance, sometimes closer. But always directly behind my vehicle, like he'd intentionally placed himself there each time the GoPro was rolling. I zoomed in on one frame. It pixelated fast, but you could make out more. Pale face, dark hair, expression blank. His head was turned just enough that he looked like he was staring straight into the lens. I paused, trying to replay my memory. I remembered seeing him by the rail. I remembered seeing him once standing sort of near my SUV. But I did not remember him being behind my car every time I hit record. And I definitely didn't remember him standing that close. I checked timestamps. The clips were spread over roughly 25 minutes. Enough time for me to move around, record, reposition gear. But in every file, the moment recording began, he was already in position. That's when the feeling started creeping in. He wasn't in my shots by accident. He was placing himself there, waiting for the red light to blink on, watching where I set up the camera. Then, I opened my dashcam footage from the drive afterward. I scrubbed until I reached the part where I left the overlook. At the far left edge of the wide-angle view, my SUV pulled out onto the road. 3 seconds later, the silver sedan followed in the exact same direction, just far enough back to mirror my speed. We went like that for miles. Curves, open stretches, a few elevation drops. Nothing crazy, nothing illegal, but the whole time the sedan stayed behind me. Eventually, I took an exit for gas. I scrubbed further. The camera angle changed as I entered the station's lot, and the sedan was gone. I sat there in that motel room, replaying all those shots of my SUV with the water behind it, and this man repositioning himself behind my car every time the camera turned on. The strangest part wasn't that he followed my car for a stretch. It was how still he stood in the footage. Almost posed. No shifting weight, no hands moving, no scratches or fidgeting, or normal human movements. Like he knew how to stand perfectly still for the lens, like he'd done it before. I thought about calling the police, but the second the idea formed, it felt silly. Someone looked into my camera too many times isn't exactly a crime. So I didn't report anything. And when I edited the final travel video, I cut the footage entirely. I told the story in voiceover because my viewers like behind-the-scenes weirdness, but I never put his image on screen. He doesn't get to be content. Since then, I pay attention to things I never used to. When I set up a tripod, I scan the area twice, once for the shot, once for anyone who seems a little too aware of where my camera's pointing. When I back away from the lens, I watch reflections in windows behind me. Because that day on the Oregon coast taught me something I'd never really considered. Sometimes you're not the only one filming. Sometimes you're the one being watched. I became a nurse because I can't stand the feeling of doing nothing. I'm the person who runs towards someone yelling for help, not away from them. That's why this story still gets under my skin. It's the only time I chose to leave someone behind, or thought I did. This happened in 2022, while I was driving cross-country for a new job. My little car was packed with everything I owned. 2 suitcases, boxes, my houseplants wedged between the seats. I was somewhere along I-80 in Nebraska. Long, flat miles of nothing. Late afternoon, I remember the sun turning everything orange. I had a podcast playing, some emergency medicine show where nurses tell weird stories, the kind of dark humor that only makes sense when you work in healthcare. I remember feeling proud and weirdly calm, thinking about the new chapter ahead. Traffic was light. Just me, a couple semis, an occasional pickup. And then I saw the car on the shoulder. It was pulled over crooked, like someone had jerked the wheel at the last second. The hazard lights blinking. Next to it, a woman was waving. One arm high, the other pointing toward a cluster of trees past the ditch. From far off, it looked like a genuine emergency. As I got closer, I saw her face. Flushed, streaked, desperate. She was clearly mouthing, "Please." So I pulled onto the shoulder behind her car, leaving a little distance so I wouldn't get boxed in. Hazards on. Foot on the brake. She rushed to my window the second I cracked it. "Oh my God, thank you," she said, breathless. "My husband slipped. He's down in the trees. I think his leg is broken. I can't get him up. I don't have reception. Please, can you just come look? You're younger. You'll be able to get down there." Her voice was shaky, but something about the details hit me wrong almost immediately. Her jeans were spotless. No dirt on her hands. No mud on her shoes. Even though the slope past the ditch looked steep and crumbly. She didn't look like someone who'd been climbing in and out of trees or trying to pull a grown man uphill. "I'll call 911, I told her, reaching for my phone. I had one bar. Not great, but enough. She shook her head hard. No, it'll take too long. He's right down there. Just come with me, please." Her urgency felt misaligned, like an actor reading lines at the wrong speed. "Did you try calling from your car?" I asked. "It's dead," she said, immediately. And behind her, the hazard lights kept blinking, powered by the dead battery she mentioned. "I'm going to call anyway," I said. She stared at me, like the answer wasn't what she expected, like I'd taken a step off the script. I hit the emergency call button. While I explained the situation to the dispatcher, the woman kept talking over me, insisting I didn't understand that her husband couldn't wait. She kept motioning toward the trees, repeating that word, "Please." I wasn't ignoring her, but something in me was shifting. It wasn't fear yet. More like every small red flag suddenly connecting into a bigger one. As I gave the dispatcher my mile marker, I looked in the driver's side mirror. Just a quick automatic check. At first I thought I was seeing a shadow behind my trunk, but as my eyes focused, the shape sharpened into a person. Someone was crouched low directly behind my car. I didn't move my head. I didn't react. I watched through the mirror as the silhouette moved slightly, like adjusting their balance, just enough to confirm it wasn't a bush or weird lighting. There was something in their hand, maybe metal, maybe just something catching the sunlight, but it instantly tightened something in my chest. "Ma'am, are you safe to stay there?" the dispatcher asked. "No," I said quietly. "I think this is a setup. There's someone hiding behind my car." My hand was already on the gear shift. The woman at my window was still pleading, still pointing at the trees, but the tone of her voice had changed. Softer, less panicked, like she could sense the shift. "I'm going to drive off," I told the dispatcher. "I'm not getting out." "Do not exit your vehicle," he repeated. "Remerge when it's safe." I put the car in drive and rolled forward. The woman stepped back quickly, her expression tightening into something that definitely wasn't gratitude. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You can't just leave us." I didn't answer. I eased back onto the highway, watching her in the rearview mirror. She stopped waving, then she turned toward the ditch. A man climbed up into view, taller than I expected, hood pulled up, the object still in his hand. He stood beside her, both of them watching my car move away. Neither of them looked toward the trees. Neither acted like someone was hurt. I didn't speed away recklessly. I kept talking to the dispatcher until I reached the next exit. My hands were shaking so badly by then that I had to park at a gas station just to breathe. A trooper called me later that night. They'd reached the mile marker I gave them. They found the car on the shoulder. But no people, no one around. No sign anyone was injured, no footprints in the ditch, no movement in the trees. Just the car, locked, sitting at an angle. The next day in my motel room, the guilt landed hard, because nurses don't ignore people waving for help. We run toward the yelling, the crying, the danger. It's built into us. And that afternoon, I did the opposite. I left someone behind, even if that someone might have been bait. I replay the whole moment sometimes, not to scare myself, but to remind myself why instincts matter. Her spotless clothes, the way she avoided every question about calling for help, the rehearsed panic, the crouched figure behind my trunk, waiting for me to open my door and step out of the safe metal box I was in. I tell this story the same way every time. I became a nurse so I wouldn't be the person who drives away. But that day, I did. And I'd rather live with that guilt than end up being a story someone else has to tell. I make my living taking photos in places most people only stop to stretch their legs. Deserts, overlooks, odd stretches of road with nothing but sky on one side and miles of rock on the other. You learn to be comfortable with quiet when you do this long enough. In 2022, I was out near Lake Powell planning a week of sunrise and night sky shots. Instead of burning money on motels, I slept in the back of my SUV. I've done it 100 times. Find a legal turnout, crack a window, set my alarm, and call it a night. This particular turnout was perfect. A cracked strip of asphalt, a railing that didn't actually guard anything, and enough distance from the nearest main road that headlights barely reached me. No other cars, no campsites, nothing but open desert. I always keep my dash cam on at night. It's set with a motion sensor that sends a ping to my phone anytime something moves in front of the car. 99% of the time, it's a moth or a rabbit or a big dust tumble. Still, it makes me feel better. I stretched out in the back, wrapped up in my sleeping bag, batteries charging beside me. The desert was cooling fast, the sky perfectly clear. One of those nights you almost want to stay awake because it's too peaceful to waste. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the app immediately. The live view loaded. Nothing but rocks and scrub. No animal, no person, no movement. I put the phone down. Not even 10 minutes later, another alert. I opened the feed again. Still nothing. The exact same scene, still as a painting. I sat there listening, like maybe the desert would explain itself. Nothing but soft wind and the tiny clicking of my cooling engine. A third alert came a few minutes later. This one annoyed me. I opened the live view, waited, squinted. My eyes searched the whole frame, looking for a blur, a shadow, the bounce of something moving. Completely empty. I checked the notification log. All the alerts were evenly spaced. Coincidence, sure, but weird coincidence. The fourth ping came as I was finally drifting back towards sleep. Then something clicked for me. These alerts weren't popping when I was rolling around. They were coming the moment I got still again. Like something approached, only when I let myself relax. I sat up, turned on the interior lights, and checked every window. The glass turned into mirrors. All I could see was the reflection of my own tired face. "Let's just end this," I muttered. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The air was colder than I expected. My boots made loud sounds on the asphalt. I did a slow walk around the SUV, sweeping my beam across the dirt, the scrub, the edge of the turnout. No footprints beyond mine, no tire tracks that didn't belong, no fresh disturbances, nothing. Not even a hint of something alive nearby. I made myself stand still for a moment, just listening. It was so quiet that I could hear my own breathing. I wasn't scared exactly, more like focused, waiting for proof that something out there actually existed. But there was nothing. I got back inside, locked the doors twice, and slid into the front seat. I figured if the sensor went off again, I'd see it with my own eyes this time. The phone sat in my hand. The windshield framed that same slice of desert. I stared until my eyes burned. Eventually, my shoulders loosened again. My body started leaning back towards sleep. Motion alert. I opened the app instantly, no hesitation. The live feed flickered. For a split second, there was a distortion right at the bottom edge of the frame, like something passed directly in front of the lens. Not a shape I could name, not a person, not an animal. Just movement so close, the camera couldn't interpret it cleanly. The windshield in front of me stayed completely unchanged. I was looking at the same spot the camera was looking at, and yet the camera saw something I didn't. I just stayed there, holding the phone, the light from the screen washing over the empty desert outside. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. Just watched. No second alert came. No shadow crossed the hood. No sound outside. But the part of me that pays attention to tiny details, the part that makes me good at what I do, kept whispering that whatever caused the distortion had to be inches from the camera. Too close for the lens to capture. Too low for me to see through the windshield. Something right up against the front of the vehicle. I knew then I wasn't sleeping again that night. I started the car. The headlights blasted the turnout. If something had been crouched there, it didn't stick around to enjoy the bright light. The rocks and scrub looked the same as before. Flat, empty, harmless. I pulled back onto the road and drove non-stop into town. Later that morning, in the motel parking lot, I reviewed the saved clips. Every time the alert triggered, the camera captured a short video. Most showed nothing, but in several clips, a few frames had the exact same distortion at the bottom edge. A flicker of movement so close it warped the image. It wasn't enough to screenshot or to show a face. Just enough to convince me the sensor wasn't malfunctioning. Just enough to prove something really was there. I didn't call the police. What would I even report? Something invisible waved at my camera? There was no crime, no threat, no physical evidence. Just repeated motion alerts and empty footage with distortions I could barely admit I saw. What I did do was book a cheap motel for the rest of the trip, and every trip after that. People laugh when I tell them I don't sleep in the car anymore. I joke that bed bugs are better than desert ghosts. They think I'm being dramatic. Truth is, I've spent years waiting behind lenses for something interesting to move. That night, something waited for me to sleep instead. And that's the first time in my life I've been genuinely grateful a camera didn't show me everything. If any of tonight's stories made you grip your steering wheel a little tighter, you're officially part of the MN family. Smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and tell me in the comments which story messed with you the most. And if you think gas stations are the safest places to stop, I've got a video that's about to ruin that for you. Click now to watch 4 creepy gas station horror stories. Or stay right here. The algorithm has another nightmare ready for you. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.